Hey, we're still on this cell membrane stuff, and we're going to be talking today about passive transport. And this is our title. And we're going to have a warm up. So I want you to write this on a piece of paper, and you can take a picture of it and email it to me. Number one, what biomolecules are found in the plasma membrane? Remember, plasma membrane is the same as cell membrane. Okay. Um, and then number two, what does the term fluid mosaic mean? And then number three, this drawing is of the cell membrane. What does the X represent? So if I look here, I see the X and it's over this one little guy with the head with the two tails. What is that called? So you can pause this video and answer that now. Okay, so next what we're going to be talking about it's the same, passive transport. So there are different types of passive transport. And the whole thing about it is it requires no energy, right? None whatsoever. So like if I was going to do something passively, it just kind of happens, right? If I'm in a car, I just happen to be in the car and it's moving, right? I'm not doing anything for the energy. I'm just along for the ride, right? So it requires no energy. So molecules are going to be moving from a high concentration to a low concentration to go through that cell membrane. And there are two types that we're going to be talking. Well, there's really kind of three. So there's diffusion and facilitated diffusion, and then there's osmosis. So we're going to go over each type of these, but all of these require no energy at all. It's just hanging out and it's doing its thing automatically. There's no effort put forth. So if we look at this diagram here, we can see, let's say I squeeze some food coloring in a cup of water, right? At first, it's going to be all together, right? Like in one section of it. And then slowly, it's going to start spreading out till that whole cup is that entire color. And that is called diffusion, right? So it's going to spread out to meet that whole area. Okay, so here is diffusion, and diffusion is the movement of a molecule from high concentration to low concentration. So this is the example again of um, the water, the red dye going in the water. See, you squirt it in there and it just sticks together and then it starts spreading out. And what happens is it wants to be completely even all over. So you can see how when it spreads out, it's evenly dispersed in the water here. So that's what it wants to go to. That's like, getting that balance in. So I always use this as an example because I think it's hysterical. You may not, but I always think it's funny. An example of diffusion. Okay, I have 3 dogs, and it's all going on all the time, right, with my dogs. Anyway, sometimes I'm sitting there watching TV and my dog is in his little doggy bed, whatever, and I'm just sitting there and all of a sudden I smell this smell, right? I'm like, oh my God. And my dog passed gas. It farted, right? So what happens is that smell comes out and it's in that concentrated area and then it disperses throughout the room and letting all enjoy it. So it goes from a high concentration coming out to a lower concentration to fill in wherever it is, right? So eventually it kind of goes away, or we think it does. It's only because it's spread out throughout an entire room, you don't smell it anymore. So that's diffusion, going from that high concentration to a low concentration. You can also think of them as perfume, right? When women wear perfume, if you're close to them, you smell it, uh, you smell it more, but the further away you smell it less. And so the molecules that do this are not stationary. So they're like constantly moving. And they collide with each other, right? So that's what helps spread these molecules out there to evenly disperse. Alrighty. And then we're going to have passive transport. Now, facilitated diffusion, I'm sorry. And this also is requiring no energy whatsoever. But sometimes with the cell membrane, the molecules that need to come in and out are just too large. They can't just go straight through the phospholipids. So let me move this. Sorry. Put it over here. So they need a little opening, right? Not that it's going to require energy, but it's just like if I go into a house, I go through the door. It's not like a big deal. I just walk through the door. If I had to, break a window, that's a lot more energy for me. But so facilitated diffusion, there are proteins in the membrane. So if we look here, these are proteins here, and see how it just has this hole in the middle? And the molecules, whatever those molecules are going from a high concentration. So you can see up here, there's 6 molecules up here to a low concentration because there's only 2 down here, right? So we can use this channel, which is a protein, and it can go through there and go to that low concentration. So we can see how this works. There's also this thing called a carrier protein, which does the same thing. It's just like, and the molecule comes in, goes out, goes in, goes out. Where in this one, the channel, it just goes straight through. But these require no energy. It's very passive. So next we have what's called osmosis, and we're going to be doing a lab about this with an egg. So osmosis is the diffusion of water through a permeable membrane. So it's all about the water, all about the water. So if there's ever a question about something going through the membrane and it says water anywhere in there, it's going to be osmosis. So it's always water. If other molecules are coming through that are not water and it requires no energy, it's diffusion. So osmosis is all about the water. So we're going to be doing a lab on that starting soon. So here's what like osmosis looks in animal cells. So we have 3 different terms, and we're going to write those down in a second. So we have hypotonic solution, and that's where the water is going to go into the cell. And oftentimes this will cause that to burst. So that's called lysed. If the cell's lysed, it had too much water in it and it blows up, right? So that's why when you have well, let me go through these. And then we have isotonic solution, and notice how that there's equal amounts on both sides, right? I have equal amounts of these green molecules on both sides. So that's, normal. Isotonic is normal. Okay, hypertonic is when there's more on the outside of that cell than inside, more water on the outside than the inside. So what happens is it shrivels up. like this. So all the water that was in this cell has been sucked out, right? So you could think of maybe like a goldfish. If we put that goldfish in salt water, it's going to shrivel up and die, right? Because the salt is going to just pull all the water that's inside that goldfish out. And yeah, poor thing, right? Okay, so these are important vocabulary words that you need to write down. So we have hypertonic here, and I usually put a small e because it reminds me that since it's open, water spills out. So what happens in a hypertonic solution, water will go out of that cell and it'll shrivel up. When we have hypotonic, it causes the water to go into that cell. So I always think of the O as water coming in and getting bigger. So hyper, the E, when you look at a little e, it opens up and it lets the water out. So it shrivels up. Hypotonic, it's bringing the water in. Okay, and then we have isotonic, and this is even. It's singing the happy song. It's nice and even. Both sides are happy. They're just all in equilibrium, being like just happy little things. And then we have plasmolysis, and this is only in a plant cell, and it's when it loses water. So if you see that the plants shrivel up, right, when you haven't watered it in a long time, that's because your vacuole is empty. So what happens is in the plant cell you have that cell wall, and then you have the cell membrane, right, inside the cell wall. And when the water all comes out, that cell membrane is pulling away from that cell wall, and that's called plasmolysis. And then we have cytolysis, and this is when a cell will burst. So if it gets too much water, it will burst. So like if you're in the hospital, right, and you have an IV, they always have to make sure that it's isotonic, that it's going to be equal with your body. Because if it's not, you can have problems. So these are important vocabulary words. And I think that's it. So we're going to now start our osmosis lab. So far for passive transport, we have diffusion, facilitated diffusion, and osmosis. These do not require energy. All right, and I will see you at the lab.